Planet Mission Part 1 by David Claiborne, as read by the author. New chapters every Monday. The full novel is available on Amazon.com and other online retailers. Links in the description. Chapter 1. Not a Celebrity. Welcome aboard to our celebrity. A woman hovered in front of the open airlock a few inches above the floor. Hands on her hips, she struck a confident pose. I'm Dr. Beebe, but you can call me Jazzy. I'm Molly McDahee, Molly said, extending her hand, fingers straight out and tense, expecting to shake Dr. Beebe's hand. Thank you, but I'm not a celebrity. I was just on the news a few times. It's nice to meet you. The doctor took Molly's hand loosely with her fingertips, wrist arched upward and hand relaxed downward toward the ship's deck. Likewise, Molly. I'm the mission doctor. I am in charge of the health of the crew and missionaries on our journey out, and once we reach Polus IV, I'll be setting up a clinic for the colonists. Isn't that exciting? I'm excited, Jazzy said. That is exciting. That should be great for them, Molly said without a trace of excitement in her voice. The pair wore the same standard-issue uniform, all blue-gray including the shoes, except for a white undershirt with its official regulation logos, designed to provide unity to all members of a mission. Yet, Dr. Beebe had arranged her uniform in a way that made it her own while still conforming to regulations. She wore her long white lab coat, the mark of her profession as was her right, over the rest of her uniform. Her hair was tied up beneath her mission cap, also standard issue for the mission. Molly pulled herself forward by a handrail and floated aboard the Arca. Her duffel bag trailed behind her and struck her when she stopped, causing her to lurch. She rubbed the back of her head where the bag hit her, feeling insufficient next to Dr. Beebe. That was brave of you, though, going on TV and denouncing your parents to support the administration. I don't think I could have done it. I don't think any of us could have, Jazzy said, smiling. That's why we think of you as a celebrity. It seemed that the doctor was doing her best to make Molly feel welcome, but Molly got the impression it was strained. She grabbed a metal handhold to prevent her forward momentum from pushing her into her new shipmate, but her duffel bag continued to move and bumped into her back again. It knocked her cap askance over her forehead and hid her green eyes for a moment until she readjusted. Oof! I'm not used to 0G yet, she said. Don't worry, just follow your training, the doctor said. We should have gravity again once we're underway. You did have 0G maneuvering training, didn't you? Molly nodded her head. I did, but I got the accelerated version. It was only a couple hours in a simulator. I'm sure it will be just as good as the weeks of training we all received. Mufasa overdoes everything. Can I tell you that I am just so glad that the administration assigned you to us, even if it was at the last minute? It is such an honor to have someone like you on the mission. It's going to be so good to have another woman, too. Can you imagine being the only woman on a mission? A person could go insane. I was told that you'll need to see me personally, in a professional capacity, I mean, Jazzy said. That's right, I have a script here. Molly pulled her phone from the pocket of her jumpsuit and with a flick of her fingers sent the prescription to Jazzy, who pulled out her phone and reviewed the order, clicking her tongue. Oh, that must be so difficult. I am here to support you in any way you need, Jazzy said as she touched Molly's elbow and lowered her voice. You know, this is truly nothing to be ashamed of. With the proper medication, therapies, and coping strategies, you will almost certainly recover, perhaps fully. Molly lowered her head and looked around. No one else was on the deck, thankfully. Oh, don't worry, Molly, Jazzy said, leaning in and emphasizing her name. I am bound by professional regulations and ethics to keep the nature of our doctor-patient relationship strictly confidential. I assure you that all your information will be held in the highest standards of confidence, by me specifically. Thank you, Dr. Beebe. Please, we're going to be working together for at least a couple of years. Won't it be great? I know we're going to be friends. But you'd better call me Jazzy. Everyone else does. Yes, I think it will be great, Jazzy. Jazzy, is she aboard? Scratched a voice over the intercom. Jazzy held her phone up and responded. Yes, she's here. She just arrived. I've got her. "All hands prepare for departure," the voice said. "Director, only the captain may use the ship's intercom, except in case of emergencies," a different voice said. "We will depart at our scheduled time in approximately 20 minutes. Please stow your gear and take your seats for departure and initial acceleration." "That was Director Waters," Jazzy said. "Which one?" Molly asked. "The first one, the one in charge of the mission. We're still working some of the procedures out with the captain. You'll meet him before we get underway." "The captain or the director?" "Don't be silly, Molly. The director, of course," Jazzy said. "Though I'm sure you'll meet the captain personally in due time. There aren't that many people aboard the ship. The administration chartered passage just for us. We'll have plenty of time to get to know each other on our way to Polus IV. Let me take you to your quarters. They're just a couple of decks below this one. We're still in 0G while we're docked at Lunaterra," Jazzy said. "The sooner we have gravity, the better for me," Molly said. "Quarters and bunks are generally aft, and the common areas forward," Jazzy said, explaining the ship's layout to the new arrival. She pushed off the wall and turned deftly, propelling herself toward a ladder. She grasped it and pulled herself down through the deck in a single motion. "Follow me, Molly," she said as her head disappeared below the floor. Molly started to follow, but her duffel bag got stuck on the edge of the deck and she lost sight of Jazzy. "Are you coming, Molly?" Jazzy called. "Yes, just give me a minute," Molly said. She pushed and twisted the straps, but the bag was stuck. At last she gave a great shove with her feet that both freed her bag and pushed her downward simultaneously, but she regretted the effort at once as her grip slipped and she almost spun off into the corridor. Molly caught the ladder and jerked both elbows around one of the rungs, hanging on. Her duffel bag carried on. "Oof," she said, as the bag strap tugged on her shoulder. "Just take your time," Jazzy said. Molly looked around. 4 gray doors lined either side of the corridor. They were quarters according to a small panel next to the door. Molly looked down the ladder to where Jazzy was, still 1 deck lower. "My room is all the way down there?" Molly asked. "You were the last to be assigned to the ship, so you got the quarters at the back," Jazzy said. "The others were taken already." "All right," Molly called back as she contemplated her next move. "I better just take them one at a time," she said to herself. "Just take them one at a time," Jazzy said. "Thanks," Molly said. She had to concentrate too hard to be exasperated by Jazzy's hand-holding. Molly went through one more deck plate and pulled herself to a stop next to Jazzy, who floated above the deck looking as if she could fly. "What's back there?" Molly asked, looking further down the ladder as she grasped the rungs with both elbows again. In spite of, or perhaps because of, her efforts to maintain stability, her feet began to float awkwardly behind her. "Use your core, your stomach and back muscles to control your extremities," Jazzy said. "It doesn't take much. That's better. The deck below this is mission cargo, and below that is engineering. The deck you came aboard on houses the receiving airlock, and above that are the common areas, crew quarters, and cockpit. This is an old ship, but it's nice. The administration commissions only the best for its missionaries. You'll hardly feel the engines vibrating, even this far back." "That's good. Is one of these my room, then?" Molly asked. "Take your pick. They're all unoccupied," Jazzy said. The deck had 4 doors like the one above it. Molly reached for the closest one and saw the panel. 12. "At least this will bring me some luck," she said. "Don't be silly, Molly. You know there's no such thing as luck," Jazzy said. The door slid open as Molly touched it. "Are you sure this one is available? Someone's name is on the panel." Jazzy maneuvered forward and peered at the label. "There's no one on this mission by that name. It's probably from a previous passenger. The crew must not have changed the nameplates yet." Jazzy tapped the nameplate with her finger, and with a couple of swiping motions located the proper menu. "Molly, is it?" she said, as she replaced the name. "Don't worry, it's just us missionaries and the director, the captain, the flight surgeon, and a couple of crew. Their quarters are all forward." "There are 2 doctors on the ship?" Jazzy shook her head. "There are, but he's only trained to provide care during the journey. Even then, he's there primarily for the crew and captain. I'm the mission doctor. Does this one look like it will work?" Molly nodded and turned her attention to the cabin. She assumed they were nearly identical, and at that moment did not care so much how it looked. Most of all, she wanted to stow her things and find stability. "Once you stow your duffel, and you know you need to really stow it, as in secure it, you received that training?" "Yes, I'll make sure it's strapped down. Even the accelerated training was good for that." "Good. After you stow your duffel, come join us in the observation lounge 3 decks up. Once we're all strapped in for the initial acceleration, we should be able to depart." We don't stay in our rooms? Regulations state it's safest if we're all buckled to seats for departure. Plus, after we get underway, Director Waters and I will want to brief everyone on the mission and begin our training. So soon? It will take weeks to get there. We don't want to waste a moment. There's a lot at stake on these missions for us and the administration, but especially for the director. Success could mean big things for any of us. Better standing, better positions in the administration, better housing, improved licensing, but especially for him. Did you know the president-elect was a mission director? Director Waters and I have set personal goals of achieving all our mission objectives, including the optional ones, something no other mission team has done before. We are going to be the best prepared team the administration has ever sent. Come join us as soon as you can, okay? Jazzy pulled up on the ladder with her fingertips and floated up through the deck. Molly pulled herself into her quarters. The doors shut automatically behind her. The cabin was relatively small, but not the smallest she had seen. The floor was aligned to her left, which made sense since once they got underway that direction would be down. It was yet one more thing to disorient her, but she reminded herself that in 0G it did not matter and tried to shrug off the feeling as she reoriented her feet. Molly found a narrow locker, but what it lacked in girth it made up in height since it ran floor to ceiling. Molly stowed her bag and strapped it down as she had been taught. Turning around, she saw a large screen on the opposite wall. Screens like this were ubiquitous. The administration gave them freely to anyone who wanted one to encourage their use. They were versatile and could serve as a television, a workstation, an entertainment center, or communication platform. Each one was linked to the administration's Li-Fi network. Many people put them in their private homes. Her parents had not, however. The screen was dark, but eventually it would display news and announcements with the occasional regulatory update, both for their mission and those intended for the general population. Each screen had a built-in camera. For that reason, she had never liked them, particularly in private rooms. They were for video calls, but she never trusted them. She had difficulty trusting any technology, for that matter. She had only acquired her first phone during mission training. Perhaps her distrust of technology was a quirk she had acquired from her parents. Above the screen was a small shelf with a bar containing some clothes hangers. Molly started to take off her mission jacket to hang in front of the screen, but thought better of it as she felt a slight chill in the air. It was time to join the others. She managed to maneuver herself out of the room and up the ladder through the 2 decks above hers. At last she pulled herself through the next bulkhead into a much wider room. This deck was open from wall to wall, wider and taller than any other corridor she had been in yet, but the room only contained 2 rows of chairs. Molly stopped where she was, unsure of how to make the transition to the seats absent a handhold, and unsure of whether it would be unseemly to crawl hand over foot along the floor to get there. "Here's our celebrity," said a man who pushed off one of the chairs and floated toward her. He caught himself gently on the bulkhead when he reached her, absorbing the momentum of his movement with his elbows. He wore the same jumpsuit, cap, and jacket as everyone else, but his jacket was embroidered with his title, Mission Director. He extended his hand to Molly. She hesitated, not because she felt unfriendly, but she was uncertain of whether she should let go of the ladder to do so. The others in the room turned to see the new arrival. Jazzy pushed herself out of her chair and floated back. "She's not a celebrity, Director Waters. She said so herself. Isn't that right, Molly?" "That's right," Molly said. "Let me introduce you to Director Waters," Jazzy said. "It's nice to meet you," Waters said, smiling and pumping Molly's hand firmly and vigorously. Molly wished he would not pull so hard and gripped the ladder harder with her other hand. Waters saw that she was uncomfortable. "You didn't get the full 0G training, did you?" he said. "No, only the accelerated version," Molly said. "Don't worry, we'll have gravity again once we get underway. The training only really matters at stations. Everywhere else we're going will have gravity," he said with something of a smile in his eyes. His manner put Molly at ease. "Let me help you to your seat," he said, extending both of his hands to her. "Please allow me, Director Waters," Jazzy said, and moved between them. "Thanks, Jazzy," Waters said, and pushing off, he floated back to his seat. "I'm sure we'll get to know each other much better, Molly. Welcome to the mission team." Jazzy took Molly's hand and pushed off the bulkhead. She towed Molly along for a few meters to the row of chairs farthest back. Molly reached out and grabbed the seat with both hands. Jazzy guided her into the seat. "Think you can buckle yourself in?" Jazzy asked. Molly nodded. "Yes, thank you," she said politely. Jazzy flashed Molly a smile, then spun back around and floated to the front row of seats where she hovered next to Waters. Molly buckled herself in. It was a 5-point harness that ran across her shoulders and fastened on either side of her waist and then again over her chest. This was the kind of harness she liked. "We're lucky we don't have to wear helmets for departure," said the man in the seat next to hers. "Otherwise our heads would be latched to the headrest and we wouldn't be able to see." "What would there be to see?" Molly asked. "This doesn't seem like much of an observation lounge." Her question answered itself as the walls faded to transparent and revealed space outside, visible through deck-to-deck windows that curved with the sides of the ship right up to a beam that ran stem to stern behind their heads. It was as if they were seated on a platform floating in space itself. Through the port side windows they could see Luna Station. Earth was visible in the distance off the starboard side, nothing more than a blue marble with swirls of white clouds. Everything else was endless blackness, punctuated occasionally by a few points of light. "Oh, dear God," Molly said, gripping the armrests of her chair. "Be careful," whispered the man sitting next to her. "That kind of language could be offensive, especially coming from a missionary." "Of course, my mistake. I apologize," Molly said. "I'm Jumbuk Kim," the man said, and extended his hand. "Mission botanist." Molly pried her hand from the armrest, shook his hand once, and quickly returned it. "Molly McDahey, exobiologist." "I think you're a bit more than that. Everyone here knew who you were before you boarded the ship. What was it like being on the news?" he asked. "It really wasn't that special," Molly said. "I don't know why people keep bringing it up." "For a lot of people it would be a great honor to be on one of the administration's news programs." "First time in space?" he asked. "Yes," Molly said. "Mine too. Isn't it great?" he said. "It is, truly great," Molly said. She looked down at the floor in front of her to avoid looking out the windows. "Have you seen the greenhouse yet?" Jumbuk asked. Molly shook her head. "You're lucky. Your quarters must be right above it. The rest of us all got assigned rooms on the same deck. Waters said he wanted to keep us together to help build mission cohesion. But if I had gotten to choose, I would have picked a room back there by yours. It's fantastic. The greenhouse. It helps recycle the ship's air and water. The captain has a collection of tiny trees he promised to show me too. I can't wait until we get underway so I can see it." Molly calculated carefully how rude it would be if she did not look up to respond when a pair of figures walked down the very wall of the room, mechanically clanking with each step. They stood facing the group, awkwardly facing directly down, perpendicular to the floor. "They have magnetic boots," Jumbuk said, answering the question written on Molly's face. "Why don't we all have those?" she asked. Jumbuk shrugged. "Probably outside of the budget. There are weight considerations too, you know. You really only need them in 0G, and even then they're mostly a luxury if you know how to maneuver." "They seem worth it to me," she said. She noticed another man sitting in the row of chairs in front of them. "Who's that?" she asked, but one of the men with magnetic boots began to speak before Jumbuk could respond. "Hello, everyone. I see our last passenger has arrived. I'm Captain Jackson, formerly of the U.S. Navy." He addressed Molly directly as the only one to whom he had not been introduced. "Thank you for your service," intoned everyone in the cabin in unison. "Thank you. This is Dr. Stevens. He is the flight surgeon. He'll take care of you should anything happen on the journey out. This is my ship, the Arca," he said with a gesture. "We'll be getting underway soon, but before we depart, by regulation, I need to go over the safety briefing." "Captain, I think I should address the mission team. It's part of my role as director," Waters said. "That won't be necessary, Waters," the captain said curtly. "It would really be appropriate, Captain," said Jazzy. "He is the director." "Regulations prescribe that I deliver the safety briefing, Dr. Beebe. It will only take a minute. Then the rest of the trip is yours." "They don't seem to like each other," Molly said in an aside to Jumbuk. "They can't have known each other that long." Jumbuk just shrugged. "This ship is bound for Polus Station in orbit of the 4th moon of Polus," the captain continued. "If that is not your destination, get off now." He paused with a big smile, waiting for his passengers to react. Jumbuk chuckled. Jazzy turned around and shot him a look. "The journey will take several weeks. The first half will be the acceleration phase, followed by a deceleration phase. The ship will have gravity as soon as we're underway, except for a few brief minutes while we transition to deceleration mid-trip." "Thank God," Molly said, a little too loud. It was her turn to get a look from Jazzy. "Remember to be careful about your language," Jumbuk said. "Below each seat and stowed in each of your quarters, you will find an emergency vac suit in the event of a hull breach." Dr. Stevens unfurled a suit in front of them all. It floated listlessly, limbs flailing in all sorts of impossible directions. You put them on just like your jumpsuit, zip them up, then pull the hood over your head and zip that down too. Dr. Stevens demonstrated putting on the suit as Captain Jackson spoke. Once it's on, pull the orange tab on the front of the suit to start the flow of oxygen. The suits self-seal once the tab has been pulled. Dr. Stevens pretended to tug the tab, then folded the suit back up. The ship is equipped with battery-powered emergency lighting in the event of a power failure. In the event the ship is a total loss, you are to evacuate to the captain's yacht, my quarters in other words, aft of the cockpit. Captain Jackson jerked his thumb up and behind him, which also acts as an emergency lifeboat. Can so many things go wrong? Molly said to Junebuck. They can't. They won't. This is just a speech they have to give, Junebuck said. Captain Jackson continued. This is the only time passengers are permitted on the upper decks, which are strictly reserved for crew and ship operations. Please understand that we are here to serve you on your voyage out to Polus Station, but those are private quarters. We are all going to be very close for several weeks. Everyone will be better served if we respect each other's personal space. We'll stay out of your quarters, and you stay out of ours. If there are no questions, then I think we're ready to go. The captain and Dr. Stevens clunked down the aisle between the seats and checked everyone's harness to make sure it was secure. Their movements seemed strange. They pulled themselves forward with their feet as they walked. Finishing the harness check, they walked up the bulkhead to the upper deck. Molly had to look away as seeing them walk up a wall brought back her feeling of disorientation. A few moments later, they heard the captain's voice over the intercom. We'll be departing in a minute. Once we start accelerating, you will feel a strong push toward the back of your seat, like a car making a hard turn. This is normal. Then once we activate the dampers, you won't notice a thing. At that time, you will be free to move about and conduct your business. This is going to be fun, Junebuck said. Oh, Molly said, wanting to say something to be polite, but not sure just what. She was too focused on accelerating and avoiding looking at the windows to think of much else. It will feel just like Earth once they activate the dampers, Junebuck said. I can't wait, Molly said. The sound of thrusters off-gassing resonated through the ship, followed by a barely perceptible movement. They could see the ship separating from Luna Station through the windows. This doesn't feel much like acceleration, Molly said, and relaxed a little. We're just maneuvering away from the station, Junebuck said. The real fun comes after we pass the moon. I thought this was your first time in space, Molly said. It is, but I read a lot. It was also part of our training, Junebuck said. I don't think I got that part, Molly said. Luna Station grew smaller and smaller as they pulled away. Strangely, it seemed to shrink in the distance like a camera zooming out, almost as if they had never been close to the station at all. The ship's thrusters fired again, and the Arca began to rotate on its axis while the station receded in the distance. Though she could barely feel the changes, the sensation of turning while moving sideways was odd. Then the Arca's thrusters fired to arrest their movement away from the station and change their trajectory forward past the moon in a sort of sliding arc. They could feel the ship begin to move faster. This isn't so bad, Molly said, relaxing even more. Then there was a roaring sound they felt more than heard as it vibrated through the entire ship. As if a rubber band suddenly snapped, they rocketed forward, released on their journey. Molly was pressed back in her seat. Junebuck gave out a whoop and smiled next to her. Here we go, he said. They accelerated for several minutes, then seemed to slow, but Molly assumed she was just becoming accustomed to their momentum. The dampers are now active, Captain Jackson's voice said over the intercom. You should have gravity now. It will feel slightly heavier than Earth, though in no time at all you won't notice the difference. You are free to move about the cabin and conduct yourselves as you see fit with respect to the ship's rules. The Arca will be where you live for the next several weeks, so make yourselves at home. Welcome aboard. The others unfastened their harness and stood. Molly undid her harness, and although she knew she should be able to stand, she was surprised to find that she could. All right, everyone, Jazzy said. Let's break for 15 minutes while we rearrange the observation lounge for training. By unlatching their bases, the chairs slid easily over the floor. They moved them toward the walls. Jazzy tapped her foot on the floor just in front of the chairs, which caused a pair of long tables to rise out of the floor. She tapped the windows, which turned opaque in response. She flicked a presentation from her phone, which projected on the opaque walls. She then flicked the presentation toward the other missionaries, where it projected above the tables. Don't you think I should do the setup? A man Molly had not met yet asked in an aside to Waters. I am the mission's media specialist, after all. Do you want to tell her to stop? Waters said. That seemed to put an end to the discussion. That's Bo Lee, Junebug looked back over his shoulder and said to Molly. He's an audiovisual specialist from the administration. Everyone take your seats. It would probably be best if we all sat on the same side. You can sit there, Molly, Jazzy said. Director Waters, do you want to begin? Waters walked to the head of the table where he rotated the projection to face him. He leaned forward and rested his palms on the table. Welcome to space, everyone, and welcome to the Mufasa mission to Polus IV. I also want to extend a special welcome to Molly McDahey, whose presence with us as a fellow missionary is the result of a special arrangement with the administration. Welcome, Molly. You have not been with us to this point, but know that you are fully one of us, a full member of my team. I want to begin with the principle at the heart of our mission. This is the same principle at the heart of our society and at the heart of all that we do. This is also the principle which you, as missionaries, must keep in mind constantly throughout your service. For the glory of the administration. For the glory of the administration, they intoned together.